Hey, I'm Ryan, and I'm one of the owners of Escape Climbing, and I want to talk a little bit about how to get started with shaping. It's a question that we get a lot from customers and site climbers. I have several employees that want to learn how to start shaping, so it got me thinking, like, let's just shoot a video and just kind of get some of the basic stuff out there, like kind of demystify some of this stuff. So we'll talk through some of the tools you need, a little bit about foam, and then really just how to approach shaping, how to either get an idea out of your head or to take an idea that you've already created in foam and how to expand it into a full line. And so let's just get started right away with some of the tools. And it's kind of interesting. This is my entire shaping tool bin, which is really actually very small. I used to have lots and lots of tools, but I found I only actually use about 3 to 4 tools, and I'll just kind of talk through them. And so this is a saw. I have actually a bigger saw because our buns of foam, that's what a big block of foam is called, a bun. So if you're ever trying to get a quote for it, you can use the right terminology. And you can just saw out these really large chunks. But then as soon as you start working with medium sized to large chunks, a saw like this is really nice to kind of get the block of foam out that you need. After that, the next saw that I use a lot, this is just a drywall saw that you pick up at Home Depot. This is the thing I use probably the most when I'm shaping. Beyond that, there's a rasp. This is, depending on the shape or like creating a sloper, these can be nice just to knock off a lot of the foam. And then I have a whole series of these clay tools. So you can just go to your local art store, pick up a whole bunch of clay tools and figure out which ones you like. I use some of these, but really these only come out when I'm doing like really detailed work, maybe on like the Crater series, which has these little dips and divots. So if you're doing some detail work, some sharp clay tools are nice. And then a couple pads of sandpaper, and these are just 3M. This is a medium, and that's a foam pad, and this is a fine. These are the only two I use. And really the medium is the one I'm constantly using, and then a Sharpie. And let's see, so for today, the reason I decided to shoot a video now is as a company, I started Escape Climbing. As we've grown, we've acquired a couple other companies, and so in the Escape family is Kingdom Climbing, Working Class Climbing, Friction Climbing, and Fusion. And right now, so this is, anyone recognize these? These are the wafers. They're in the Kingdom Climbing line. And one of the most popular sets, it's a really simple set, fun to climb on, easy to set some more difficult moves. And it's a really popular set, and we want to expand the line and add dual texture to it. And so that's a shape that I'm going to make right now. I'm about halfway through reshaping the line in preparation to doing a dual texture series of the wafers. So thinking about that, the other big tool, so I just talked through the basic tools for today. I'm just going to be using these 3. And foam is like the next big tool and the other supply that you need to think about. I like to use a really high density foam. And so this is it's pretty strong, low density foam, like a floral foam. And if you see photos on the internet and it's like a blue or green foam, that's really soft stuff. You can almost shape the entire thing with your hands and just kind of falls apart. The high density foam takes a little bit to get used to, but once you get used to it, it's really nice to work with. The biggest benefit that I like about the high density foam is that after you create the shape in foam, you can actually pull down pretty hard without ruining the shape. And that really lets you feel how sharp that edge is, what the radius is going to feel like. Where the softer foams, you have to be really gentle with it, and if you like tried to pull and simulate any sort of climbing or pressure on it, you'd start denting the foam. So that's the single biggest reason I almost exclusively use high density foam. There's all kinds of different reasons to use other foams. It might give you a different texture, different feel. Some people are really comfortable shaping that foam. But that's totally up to you. And so if you're just getting started, if you've never done any shaping before, all you have to do, go to the hardware store, buy this tool, pick up one clay tool, and go on Amazon and pick up a 3M sandpaper pad. Don't get a piece of sandpaper. It really needs to be this like spongy pad. I'm not sure what that's called. Just type in spongy pad and I'm sure nothing will show up on Amazon. Those are your tools, and then go to the art store or like a Joann Fabrics or whatever, and pick up a block, just a small block of floral foam. And that's the easiest way. It's really cheap. That's the best way to get started. So that aside, as far as what we're doing today, like I said, we're gonna shape a wafer. And getting into how to approach and how to learn, how do you start building those tools to be a good shaper is, I have an art background, and when I learned how to draw, the professor or my teachers in high school, they pretty much just have you look at a picture and then you draw it. And in one sense, that's the easiest way to start shaping, is you can take a hold and you just try to replicate it. And so I give you permission. You can grab any one of our holds from any of our families, one of your favorites, take it down and just try to replicate it in foam. And that's really going to build those tools to start learning how to shape, to kind of see the contours and to, you know, implement that into foam. Just like you can look at a picture and then you draw it. And looking at a tree and then drawing it, you're going to start noticing all the subtleties as you study it and then try to apply it into whatever medium. And so shaping foam is no different. It's the best way to do it. And so that's what we're going to kind of do here with the wafers. And just a little backstory, that's not the way I learned how to shape, is I just started carving into foam and learning it, and it was a long, difficult process to get good and efficient with shaping. But as Escape evolved, either molds would burn out and I didn't have a good master and I had to like exactly replicate a hold. Or as we've acquired some of these other companies and I'm expanding their lines, I'm really taking a design and I'm having to replicate it or create an iteration. So it has to really follow the same aesthetics. And through those processes, it's showed me how important like this step is, and I can fast track your learning if I can convince you to just start shaping by replicating an existing hold. And that's going to fast track you, just like in art, as you learn how to draw or paint, you're going to look at a photo, and that's much easier than going out and doing like looking at it visually and then applying it. Like you have a physical thing, turn it into a physical piece of foam. All right, so let's get started with shaping the foam. The other tool I forgot to mention is you need something to level your foam. So especially as you get started, you're going to have lots of scrap that you're going to want to reuse. And all you need is, like when I first started, I just took my foam out to the concrete sidewalk, which has some grit, and I just move it around and that levels it. For this purposes, I just took some scrap. This is a manufacturing facility, so we have lots of scrap sanding belts from our big belt sander. So I just cut a sanding belt, glued them 2 strips down on the board, and now I can level my foam really easily. You could also do it with just some grip tape. Like if you have like a shaping table that you're going to get set up, just put some grip tape down and then you can have like a leveling area. So this one, actually really easy. The first thing you want to do is, it's really important that you start with a level base. And so this one is level, and now we're going to kind of line out, you know, this is the hole that we want to put into the foam. And these are the wafers, and the reason we're shooting the video on the wafers, this is like one of the most basic holds that you could shape. And it's not complicated, it's not ink cut, so you don't have to worry about these different radiuses. It's really low profile. There's not a whole lot going on to it. Some of the most basic shapes are the most fun to climb on. And part of this process of taking a hold and replicating or redesigning is you'll start to learn the subtleties of the hold and then how to create that. And through that process, that will allow you, when you have an idea in your head, then you'll already have those skills built in. They'll be able to take that idea in your head and then replicate it into foam. And so this is like a physical way to be like, oh, this doesn't look quite right, and then you can study it, and then make those like macro or micro adjustments to make sure the profiles are coming in right. And so as you look at the wafers, that these holds pretty much from this point to the edge is really low profile, and it almost shoots a straight line down. It doesn't hump over. There's not a flat spot on the top and then it dips down, and it curves almost the whole way. They're fairly uniform as far as like a dome shape. And then the actual grip surface is on some of these is just a flat ledge. And so again, this wafer, probably the most easy hold to shape. And so I'd suggest something around this realm if you're gonna start this. So what I'm gonna do is, just for the sake of this video, I don't always do this, but I'm just gonna kind of trace it out, just gonna kind of give you an idea. And we're creating the wafer, it's a dual texture line, so I don't actually want the dual texture version to be an exact replica. So I'm gonna change it a little bit, but for the most part, I want the aesthetics and the actual climbing to be very similar. So it should have a very similar feel. So if you love the wafers and you're buying the dual texture wafers, from that climbing experience and that setting experience, it should really be the same tool in the setter's hands. When you're shaping, you're always thinking about either the climber or the setter, and enabling both of them for a really positive experience, either setting or climbing. And so I just took my Sharpie, I lined it out. I know that this is the main grip surface up here, and then this is where it's going to taper down and meet the wall. And so at this point, I'm actually just going to take my saw here. I'm going to cut it out really quickly. I grabbed a piece of foam that's actually much thicker, so I'm going to save myself a lot of time. I'm going to go over and grab the other saw, and I'm just going to thin this whole piece out. And that'll save me a lot of time in the next couple of steps here. Uh-oh. I just lost my drawing. I jumped ahead of myself. I'm going to put that back on top. And I'm just going to cut straight down. And essentially what I'm going to be left with after this is it's going to look like a football. And then it's just going to be a really basic football shape, okay? And so on the top edge, I'm just going to leave this alone because this is the flat edge that we're going to be climbing on. And then what I know is that these ends taper down really nice and smooth. So I'm just going to take the saw, I'm going to taper that end down, flip it over. And what I'm doing is I'm tapering this edge, and then I'm going to come over and taper this edge. And then obviously I have this big edge that you could just pinch and climb, and so I'm going to then take this whole bottom part of the hold, and I'm going to try to taper that pretty much a line from here to here without creating a flat spot or dipping or humping too much on this one. And again, normally I always wear a respirator when I'm doing this. I don't have it on just so I can talk, and I'm only doing one hold here really quick for the video. And so right now at this point I have a really flat spot up here, and I need to kind of knock these edges off so it tapers. So I don't want it to go flat and then hump. I'm going to knock this down. And for your first couple of holds, work really slowly and then keep evaluating, because it's easy to take more foam off and it's impossible to put it back on. So if you cut too far in, or if you go a little too far, you're going to have to get a new block of foam, or it's going to turn into something completely different. So at this point we have our hold really roughed out. Okay, so we have our climbing surface up here. It's tapering nicely on both ends, and it's just it's fairly uniform, and it really fits into the basic aesthetic of all the wafers. At this point, I'm going to take the medium pad, and there's different pads. There's really thick pads. Those are going to give you sharp edges. This is going to really contour to your hands, which is going to give you those like nice arching radiuses. Another thing to mention is if you look at this, I'm shaping about 1/4 inch higher than the other wafer. And the reason is this is really important, that you need to shape a climbing hold larger, about 1/8 to 1/4 inch bigger than you want to end up in the end product. Because when it goes into molding, it's going to get molded and you might lose a little bit in that molding process. And then when they're pouring that mold over and over and over, they're not going to pour it all the way up right to the edge, because that's going to, in the production line, it's going to take a lot more work to sand back down to that baseline. So they're always going to short pour the mold, you know, depending on the manufacturer, maybe 1/8 of an inch, and in an extreme case, 1/4 inch. But on something smaller like this, I just want to shape a hold that's about 1/8 inch taller than you want it to be as an end product. So again, this one's roughed out. I'm going to grab my sandpaper. And the nice thing, we have a big glass garage door there, so it's casting a lot of shadows. The shadows are actually nice because they're going to let you show, it's going to show up like any like dips or grooves or anything funky in the foam. So normally I'd be working with an air compressor. I'd blow this off. I don't want to breathe all that in right now. And that will let you kind of see where you're at in the sanding process. All right, so as I look at that dome shape, it's really coming together. I'm going to work on the grip surface. And kind of these profiles, I have a little bump here I need to sand out. I'm picking up any shadows to see if I need to work anything else out. It actually looks really good. And then I just kind of hit the top quick. If you start using sandpaper like this, you need to be really careful when you start working your grip surface and where that pressure point is, because that's going to create little subtleties of where your fingers go in. It might hump it weird, or it might create a weird dip in there. And so as I come over this, I really want to create a flat ledge, a pretty neutral hold. And right now, it's hard to see, but I have a little hump over there. And that's just from my sandpaper being humped. And so I'm going to apply pressure, and I'm just going to kind of watch it. And I'm coming flat in here. I'm knocking off that hump. And then again, with the high density foam, I can really get in here and feel this. I have a really sharp radius on this edge, and I'll knock that down right at the end. So at this point, I'm feeling through. Use both left and right hand, because a climber is going to hit this with either hand. This isn't a directional hold. And now I'm going to take the foam, I'm going to knock down my edge. These wafers just have a little knockdown just to take that sharpness off. And then I always clean up my edges with my finger. I don't have enough control with the sanding pad, and I can really feel what I'm doing. And at this point, we essentially have a wafer. So again, this is one of the most basic shapes that you could create, and so that didn't take very long. And that's why, honestly, the simple series, if you're going to create a line, these are really quick to shape if you understand what you're going for. With this is going to be dual texture. At this point now, I will air compressor this. I will bring it to the light. I'm going to look for anything that's off. I'm going to double check this grip surface, and I'll just kind of inspect it, and then I'll give it one more polish up. At that point, if there's anything, I might come back with the fine, and then touch up anything with the fine sandpaper, and then we're off into dual texture. So dual texture is one thing that we put a lot of R&D into as a company. And so I won't really get into much of the details of how we do that, but in a basic sense, at this point, I'm just going to take some plaster, and we're going to plaster over the top, and I'm going to start working that dual texture surface. And if you want a matte finish, you could just leave it with whatever drywall. It doesn't matter what you pick up. Just go to the hardware store, get any sort of a plaster, and that will give you a matte finish if you leave it there, or grab a can of spray paint, a high gloss or something, if you want to start working towards a high gloss finish with your dual texture. So that's shaping in a nutshell. I'm interested, as we look at professionalizing as an industry, I think it's really important to start developing the next generation of shapers, and there's not a lot of shapers out there, and especially people that make any money on it. And so I want to do more education on this. There'll be more videos to come. If you have questions, and we can fast track that. Our industry is moving quickly, and as route setting professionalizes, my desire is that shaping professionalizes with it. And because those two professions are so tied together, is a route setter can only work with the tools given to him, and the shaper is really the person creating those tools, and there's a lot of integration there. So with that, post any questions down in the comments, or shoot me an email. My email is ryan@escapeclimbing.com, and I'd be happy to field some questions and help. The other thing quickly is people, as you look at getting started, it's going to be a process to be able to just take a piece of foam and create even a simple wafer like this. So don't get frustrated if it doesn't turn out or it doesn't look like it. If it doesn't look right, keep studying it, figure out why the profiles aren't going there, and that side-by-side comparison can really help get you there. Because again, if you can't take a shape that's physical and you can touch and create another shape that's physical and you can touch and have a mirror, it's going to be really hard to take a good idea out of your brain and put it into foam. And so I think that's a really basic skill that you can start with. With shaping, as you reach out to companies or you start creating shapes, as far as what the industry is going for, just to get a foot in the door, kind of build your resume, I would ask, if I was the shaper and I just wanted to get some holds in the line, if they're a good set of holds, I would just ask for a copy. And that's how you're going to build your resume. As you start to build a reputation, you have more holds in the line. The people that are out there shaping for other companies, really what they're getting paid is it's generally about retail and a half. And so that means that if the wafers, these new wafers are selling for $1,000, retail, that they will get paid retail and a half, they would get paid $1,500. Some of the best shapers out there might be retail ×2 plus a copy of the holds. And you can, that's kind of the gray area, you can negotiate retail and a half plus a copy of holds, or like whatever's valuable to you. But again, starting out, if you don't have a resume, if you don't have holds in the market, then you really need to start with just like, hey, XYZ hold company, send them photos, see if they're interested in it, and then just ask for a copy. And then as you build that resume, you can start moving to retail and a half, retail ×2. So just wanted to talk a little bit about how to get paid and what that looks like.